Bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay shiptascha karmadi tarangamadye kripa mayitvam sharanam prapana brinde namaste charanaravindam bhajami radham aravinda netram smarami radham madhurashmitasyam vadami radham karuna varadram tato mamanasti katyena chapi. I first of all offer millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astau Tarasara Shishimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astau Tarasara Shishimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So, in our study of Das Mula, we've tried to stay very focused on the topics of each prameya and the established praman. So just to recap through the verse again, because I want us all to become very familiar with this verse. Amnaya praha tattvam. Amnaya, the Veda. Praha, following, or proclaimed. Tattvam, the truth that is proclaimed in the Veda. The Veda is the only substance that we can fully depend on because of its apurushaya quality. It's not filled with the four defects that man is filled with. So in this sense we can depend on it because it's coming from that transcendental realm. So we are so blessed that we have taken shelter of this. Imagine if we took shelter of something else and it didn't prove to be true. We see in this world people put their dependence on so many different authorities, your parents even. Then you find out later on that they actually weren't like God that you thought they were when you were a child, or the governments, or any sort of authority. But we will never be disappointed in putting our faith and trust in the Vedic teachings, ever. So then the next, Harim, Iha, Paramam, Harim, this Paramam, Krishna is the supreme tattva. What is the tattva of Krishna? We've discussed that at length. And then Sarva Shaktim, Krishna is the embodiment of all energies from Swarup Shakti coming down through the Sat, Chit, Ananda potencies coming from Swarup Shakti. And then Rasabdim, the Rasa Tattva, trying to understand a little bit of the analysis of rasa, to give us an inkling, to give us some idea of the spiritual reality, of its extraordinary features, which are all beyond this material world, to try and inspire some enthusiasm and greed into our hearts to want to go into that direction, because this is the necessary qualification for taking up this path of Raganuga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has only come to give Rag Marg. Rupa Goswami has given his whole life for this establishment of Rag Marg. All of our acharyas, Jiva Goswami, Narottam, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Baladevi Dibhushan, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Srila Bhakti Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, our Prabhupada, and of course our Gurudev have given their entire lives just to implant and encourage us to have greed in these topics. So now we're just trying to get the whole framework, the whole structure, the whole picture of existence, which is capsulated in these 9 prameyas, supported by the praman. So now we come to Tad Vibhinamsams Cha. We discussed yesterday at great length the tattva of the jiva. What type of energy is he? Where is he coming from? He's not coming directly from Krishna. He's coming from Krishna's energy. It's a separated part and parcel. Vibhinam means separated. Okay? These truths are very simple. Once we just grasp this foundational terminology, then it becomes very easy for us to absorb ourselves in the scriptures because we understand the language of them. So this is all I'm trying to present through these classes, is basically the language and the structure. We're not going so deep into each particular prameya. It would be nice to have another opportunity to do that, but at this stage we just want to make the language clear. So today we're into Jivan Prakriti Kavalitam. This Kavalitam means swallowed up by Prakriti, by the material nature. Yesterday we discussed at length how Maya Devi will control the Anuchit, that insignificant Jiva. We are of a nature of Anu, atomic. Krishna is Purna. Krishna is the controller of Maya. So today I want to begin to read directly just from Jiva Dharma because it explains so beautifully everything. So you have your sheets in front of you, and this is in the blue edition on page 379, halfway down. So I'm going to read very slowly and I'm going to stop repeatedly, and if any of you have any questions as we read, you must ask me. Otherwise I will ask you questions, because our idea of coming is to try and understand this topic, at least with the intellect today. So now Babaji is explaining. He's saying, first there is the beautiful verse, the Dasa Mula, chapter 6, and it's describing that by his original nature the Jiva is an eternal servant of Krishna. His Swarup Dham is service to Sri Krishna, his nature. This is not on the sheet of paper, this is the verse before that. Bhagavan's illusory energy, Maya, punishes those jivas who are opposed to him and who have given up their constitutional dharma, becoming absorbed in material enjoyment. She binds them in the ropes of the three modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tama, covers them with gross and subtle bodies, puts them in a miserable cycle of karma, and forces them to suffer happiness and distress in heaven and hell. Now we're going to discover how this is actually our own choice. We have made this choice, and understand from the very beginning that this is not some historical choice that we made billions and billions of lifetimes ago, but it's a present, moment-by-moment choice that we're making. I described yesterday how many times before we take rest tonight will we turn away from Krishna. In order to understand this topic, why I turned away from Krishna, you can understand now today, why are we turning away from Krishna? That is the answer to the question. Why today are these material attractions so much higher than my affection or attraction to Krishna? That will be the answer to the question so many times. Okay, so now we begin to hear Babaji's answer. He says, innumerable jivas appear from Sri Baladev Prabhu to serve Vrindavan Bihari Sri Krishna as his eternal associates in Goloka Vrindavan. And we discussed when we were talking about Shakti Tattva, I think, how in Goloka Vrindavan there are 12 rasas. There are the 5 principal rasas, Shanta, Sakya, Dasya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, and there are also these 7 secondary rasas. We described in Rasa Tattva how these secondary rasas, they appear to take the place of the original Sthayi Bhav. For example, Hasya, that's laughter or amusement. It would appear to take the place of the original Sthayi Bhav, but it's only temporary. That Gona Ras will only remain for a short period of time, and then again the original Sthayi Bhav will manifest. So these 7 Gona Rasas, Hasya, Vibhats, disgust, Rodra, anger, Karuna, compassion, Vira, chivalry, Karuna, I said Karuna, Adbhuta, astonishment, and one other, Bhaya, fear. We won't forget that one. No. So fear, yes. These 7 Gona Rasas are all present in different degrees in Goloka Vrindavan. Now, the next part of this sentence, And others appear from Sri Sankarshan to serve the Lord of Vaikuntha, Sri Narayan, in the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky, there are only, in Vaikuntha, only 2.5 rasas. So we want to get the complete picture the whole way down. Okay, eternally relishing rasa, engaged in the service of their worshipable Lord, they always remain fixed in their constitutional position. This is the nature of the Nitya Siddhas, the eternally perfected beings, who are manifest in these two realms of Goloka Vrindavan and Vaikuntha. Engaged in their service of their worshipable Lord, they always remain fixed in their constitutional position. They always strive to please Bhagavan and are always favorable to him. This is the nature of the Jiva, is to please him. They know nothing else except pleasing Sri Krishna. When we hear about this consciousness of the Nitya Siddha Parikrmas, it should give us great enthusiasm and encouragement in our own bhajan to appreciate this constant, consistent attraction to Krishna. It never diminishes for a single second. There's never a moment when that attraction diminishes. It's all-encompassing. By virtue of the spiritual Shakti, they have the strength to stay fixed in their devotion. So the spiritual Shakti coming from Swarup Shakti, that Shakti, it's called Bal Shakti, that power potency coming from the Lord himself, his power of attraction. That power of attraction is so sweet. Krishna's personality, his beauty, his qualities are so sweet. That is the power, that is the attraction to keep me enthusiastically running to please him. My heart is just filled with that desire to please and bring pleasure to Sri Krishna. And it's nourished by Krishna's own potency of splendorous beauty. That is what is attracting me. That is what is motivating me, that sweetness of Krishna. They have the strength to stay fixed in their devotion, and they have no connection with the material energy. In fact, they are unaware that there is an illusory energy called Maya, because in the spiritual reality only Yoga Maya reigns supreme, making all arrangements for Krishna's pleasure, and the living entities are only trying to please Krishna in all of their activities and all of their endeavors. In the very confidential pastimes of Goloka Vrindavan, the different camps of the Sakhis are always trying to please Krishna, but just the nature of the diversity of the camps between Chandravali and Sri Radha, then there's great competition. But it's all with the intention of pleasing Krishna. It's all motivated by that. Since they reside in the spiritual world, Maya stays far away from them and does not affect them at all. Always, this is Mahamaya, always absorbed in the bliss of serving their worshipable Lord, they are eternally liberated and are free from material happiness and distress. Because happiness is also a distressful condition for the materially embodied soul, because the happiness is only temporary, and then again the misery will come, and then after the misery a little relief, and then like this fluctuation. Their life is love alone, and they are not even conscious of misery, death, or fear. There are innumerable atomic conscious jivas who emanate, so that's the description of the first two types of jiva, totally absorbed in their attraction to serving Krishna. There are innumerable atomic conscious jivas who emanate from Karanadakshayi Mahavishnu's glance upon this Maya Shakti. So Karanadakshayi Vishnu is manifesting from Lord Narayan or from Sankarshan. And these are called Parush avatars. There's Karanadakshayi Vishnu. He lies down in the huge waves of the Karana ocean. This Karana ocean is manifesting from the perspiration of Karanadokshayi. And he's lying within that ocean in a great, beautiful palace. There's a pastime in the Krishna storybook, or in the 10th canto. It's describing this place, this abode of Mahavishnu, when Arjuna and Krishna go to rescue those sons of the Brahmana. It's described a huge palace, and it's described that the waves of this ocean are churned by the mighty rays from the effulgence of the Brahmajyoti. It's the Brahmajyoti that churns these waves in the Karanadokshayi ocean. So it's a very amazing, astonishing place. It's the borderline between the two worlds, between the material world and the spiritual world. It's the physical borderline. This word tatashta that we're going to come across regularly through here today, tatashta is not a particular location. It's a state of consciousness. Nevertheless, this demarcation line begins with the Karana ocean. This is the demarcation line. Sometimes you might see it depicted, it's called the river of desire. To cross that river of desire. The first planetary system is called Siddhaloka on the other side. Siddha means perfect. Then after Siddhaloka we come to Shivaloka or Kailash. And after there is Vaikuntha. And there are some planetary systems in between also. But this is just basic description. And then Karanadokshayi Vishnu, by the he has this desire to impregnate the material energy. At that time, this pradhan, it's called. It's described as unconglomerate energy. It's not cohesive. It hasn't formed anything. It's just energy. It's like the womb of a mother. It doesn't have any seed in it yet. It has all the requirements to absorb a seed because it's filled with energy. But it hasn't actually formed anything tangible at this stage. So then Ramadevi, who is the maidservant of Karanadokshayi Vishnu, she understands the desire of her Lord to impregnate this unconglomerate energy, this pradhan. So she manifests by her energy this light which will come from the glance of Karanadokshayi Vishnu. It's coming from Mahavishnu, but the embodiment of that is actually Ramadevi. It's Krishna's consort. She is actually carrying that, not carrying it entirely, but she is the embodiment of that glance. And within that glance, come from the body of Mahavishnu, is the Jiva, the embryo of the Jiva, and the time, the color factor is there within the glance. And then this illumination is actually carried also by Shambhu. Shambhu, Lord Shiva, he's actually, he's like the halo, it's described, of this illuminating glance coming from Mahavishnu. These are all inconceivable terminologies, but the Lord himself is inconceivable to us in our material condition. So we can just hear about this amazing conception of the material reality coming from Mahavishnu originally. It is embodied by Ramadevi, his consort, and it is carried or encapsulated by the halo of Shambhu himself. Shambhu, Lord Shiva, he is carrying this seed of the Jiva and time, and he impregnates this unconglomerate energy. This Shakti, this energy, is called Adara Shakti. It's like the womb of a mother. It's the great cosmic conception of these worlds. So this seed is carried by Shambhu. This is why we see the Shiva Lingam representing the cosmic creation, and it's surrounded by the yoni of the female aspect of creation. So this ingredient is placed into the energy, into the Shakti of this pradhan, and that is where the material universes are conceived, within the womb of that Shakti. Do you understand? It's exactly like the material conception of a child, but it's in the cosmic realm. So it's the cosmic conception of this universe. It's the same sexual principle. It's the same Shambhu representing the male organ, impregnating the yoni, the female, womb. So this is the nature of the cosmic manifestation. This is all described in absolutely clear detail in the Brahma Samhita. When we hear these descriptions, it gives us great faith in the reality of this occurrence, that this is how these worlds manifested, when it can be described in such absolute, clear detail, step by step by step by step. Lord Brahma, he recites in so many hundreds of verses. We only have like about 50 or so of them in the Brahma Samhita. But actually there are so many more verses in the scriptures that describe this cosmic conception. And so at this time the Jiva is coming from, he's manifesting from the body of Mahavishnu. Now at this point we might consider what is the nature of the Jiva's consciousness in Mahavishnu's body. Now, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in his teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's given us a very clear description of the nature of the Jiva inside Mahavishnu. He says, before acquiring material designations, that means before we manifest from Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is the second Vishnu, Purusha avatar. Before we come into this world, the living entity is supremely pure because he's coming from the pure body of Mahavishnu, from Karanadakshay Vishnu. It says, even though he is not engaged in serving the Supreme Lord, in other words, his dharma, his swarup, has not been activated. When the dharma, the nature of the jiva, is activated, it's only activated towards service. Because service is the symptom of love. And everything around Krishna is only of a loving reality. There is nothing else except love. So this loving propensity has not been inspired in the jiva's heart at this point in Mahavishnu, in his body. So even though he is not engaged in serving the Supreme Lord, he remains situated in the neutral position of Shantaras due to his marginal nature. So the jiva is being manifested as Tatashta Shakti. That means he has this marginal tendency from the very beginning to look to Maya or look to Krishna. It's a weakness that is there originally within the jiva. But still the jiva has to take responsibility for that. Though the living entity born from the marginal potency does not at that time exhibit a taste for serving the Lord due to lack of knowledge of self-realization, his direct propensity of serving the Supreme Lord nevertheless remains within him in a dormant state. So just like a seed, that potency is still within the jiva. You understand? But it hasn't been inspired yet. Though the indirect propensity for material enjoyment, which is contrary to the service to the Lord, is not found in him at that time. So indifference to the service of Hari and the seed of material enjoyment, which follows the state of indifference. I explained this yesterday. As soon as you want to enjoy, immediately that's like an offense, and because of that, suffering will come. They're both within the jiva. So the jiva, the living entity who belongs to the marginal potency, cannot remain indifferent forever by subduing both devotional and non-devotional propensities. In other words, what he's saying is that within the body of Mahavishnu, the Jiva himself is in a state called Shantaras, neutrality. He doesn't want to go to Krishna, and he doesn't want to come to this material world. He doesn't want either. It's something of an impersonal conception. Therefore, all of us have experienced at some point in our existence this impersonal conception. Therefore, it's very easy for us to return to that place. Almost it's more easy for us to become impersonal in this world than it is to go to Krishna, because we've actually already experienced that impersonal impression coming from the body of Mahavishnu. We've never experienced service directly to Krishna. So it's something that has to be reawakened, even though that is our dharma. That is our essential dharma. So understand the difficulty that the jiva is faced with. He's faced with being attracted to the impersonal because he has already an impression of that. And he's never directly served Krishna. So he hasn't got that first impression. Nevertheless, it is his dharma. It is the swarup of the jiva to serve Krishna, because that is the highest conception of love. In the impersonal state of consciousness, there is no sweetness that is experienced through a loving relationship. It's devoid of a subject and an object. It's simply the one subject. That is tragic, really. You're just relishing the taste of your own subject. But there's no loving nature. There's no mood or space for worship. To be denied worship is hell. If you can't worship and honor something, we described this already a few days ago, the sweetness of worship that Krishna himself chooses to actually engage in. Krishna loves that mood of worship personally. All the residents of Vrindavan adore that worshipable opportunity to Sri Krishna. So to be denied a state of worship, to be denied a state of service, is the greatest tragedy. This is the consciousness of the impersonalist, and this was the consciousness of all the jivas coming from this Mahavishnu Parush expansion from Lord Narayan. I'll just read a little bit more of this and then we'll go on with Jivadharma. He therefore contemplates unconstitutional activities from his marginal position. As a sleeping person dreams that he is active in the physical world without actually being involved in activities, when the dormant, indifferent living entity of the marginal potency exhibits even a little apathy to the service of the Supreme Lord and situates himself in a neutral, unchanging condition, for even a little time he is infected by impersonalism. This is our condition in this world today. We see how this impersonalism has even manifested externally with our lifestyles. You know, we all sit in our metal cars, etc., separated from each other. We go into these huge supermarkets that are so impersonal. You know, our whole lifestyles have become impersonal. The nature of relationship has become eroded at this point in history, in Kali Yuga. More and more, this mood of impersonalism is becoming prominent. That is why the conditioned soul desires to merge in the impersonal Brahman, thus exhibiting the mind's fickle nature. But due to neglecting the eternal service of the Lord, and thereby developing the quality of aversion to the Lord, he cannot remain fixed in that position. In this way, aversion to the Lord breaks his concentration of mind and establishes him as the master of the world of enjoyment. How amazing. Did you understand that? No, it's not there. This is a separate thing that I'm reading from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. I'll put this on the website so other people can also read it. It's just a couple of paragraphs, but it's describing the state of condition of the soul within the body of Mahavishnu. that he can't, he's not accepting Krishna as a personal entity at this time. He wants his own enjoyment. So somehow or other, because he wants that and he can't get that in the body of Mahavishnu, that this impersonal tendency develops where he's going to try and get his enjoyment from being the Lord over matter. And we definitely are the lords of matter. When the spiritual soul falls into the darkness of this world, he knows at that point that he's actually superior to matter. And he can control matter. He takes great pleasure in being like the controller. This is a great anartha that we have. Even as devotees we have this. Desiring to control our situation more than allowing the Lord to intervene and make the arrangement. We must obviously take some control in our lives, but we're always looking for what is Krishna's indication as to where I should go, how I should do things. If I'm so concerned with my own sense of being the controller, this can be very, very difficult for me in all aspects of life. But if I am submissive to his almighty control, and I am always looking for his path, his way, Krishna will illuminate that very quickly. Everything will become very easy and smooth because his energy of Yogamaya will intervene constantly and make the arrangement perfect. But if I'm trying to be the controller, then Mahamaya immediately will reign supreme. Immediately she will be in control. And immediately I will have some attraction to this world. It's astonishing how Krishna has woven this fabric for us to live in. Where if we don't go the path of affection and love in the highest consideration, we're going to be doomed to this miserable suffering condition that we're in. This is what Jiva Tattva is all about. It's so astonishing. But it's even more astonishing that we can talk about these facts that are present in the energy where we live, in the life that we live, in this environment that we live. It's astonishing that we can even analyze it, that we can strip it down, we can try to intellectually appreciate it, and then by that intellectual or intelligent appreciation, we can start to become transcendental to it. Do you understand? It's wonderful to have these descriptions given to us. Nothing is hazy. Like the mystic path, Prabhupada describes it as being misty, very hazy, mystified. You can't quite define anything. Everything is sitting on the fringes of our consciousnesses. But this path of devotion, of pure bhakti, is totally definitive. It's totally explicit. You can see it clearly. Of course, the ultimate quality of having that submissive affection for this highest conception depends on our practices and so on, as well as the mercy of the Lord. But still it can be described. Therefore it has substance. Now, we're talking about these jivas who are coming from Karanadakshayi Vishnu, and I've just described the state of the consciousness within Mahavishnu. Since these jivas are situated next to Maya, so physically we're situated next to the material world, we're coming out in the material world, they perceive her wonderful workings. Don't ever underestimate Maya Devi. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to say, you Westerners, you don't have enough respect for Maya. You don't realize how powerful she really is. You think you can just flirt alongside of her and do all kinds of nonsense and not be affected? You'll be affected immediately, subtly and grossly. Don't take any chances. This is why we separate the sexes so strongly. We have the ladies sitting on one place, the men sitting on another, etc. We're constantly aware of this highest attraction in the world is between male and female. This is the highest attraction in the gross region and the subtle region. The subtle region is fame, adoration, and distinction. This is the subtle influence of the sex desire. So this is the most strong attraction to this world. So the devotees are very aware of this, and we try and are cautious in our arrangements, in our associations, etc., to safeguard against this. Although these jivas have all the qualities of the jivas that I've already described, that's in the spiritual world, they have the same as the Nitya Siddha Parikas. They are weak because of their minute and marginal nature. Nature, it's saying. Our nature, we're born with that nature. Sometimes they are inclined to look to the spiritual world and sometimes to the material world. In this marginal condition, the jivas become debilitated because at that time they have no spiritual strength from their worshipable Lord's mercy. Among these unlimited jivas, those who want to enjoy Maya become engrossed in mundane sense gratification and enter the state of eternal bondage. It's eternal bondage as long as we are under the influence of Maya. Maya means past, present, and future. That's what it means. That's what material consciousness means. It means these three considerations of time: past, present, and future. Spiritual time is only the powerful present. Therefore, when the sadhak starts his entrance into transcendence, those three stages of material time will no longer bind him. Therefore, in the material consideration, we are eternally bound, nitya baddha. But as soon as that baddha jiva begins to contemplate transcendence, he comes out of that material boundary of three stages of time. You understand? So he's no longer bound. Because often the devotees, they ask this question: what does eternally bound mean? This word, nitya, nitya means eternal. Nitya baddha, eternally bound. What does that mean, eternally bound? It means we are bound as long as we are in this material consciousness. Bound by the three stages of past, present, and future. Do you understand clearly? It's really simple. It's really, really simple to understand. You just have to focus and address the mind to hear clearly. It's not a difficult conception. It's not something that's beyond our comprehension. So as long as he's in that material state of consciousness, he's eternally bound. And when he breaks that material consciousness, he's not bound anymore by that eternal mayic influence. You understand? On the other hand, the jivas performing chid anushilanam, or worship of Bhagavan, receive spiritual shakti, chid bala. This spiritual shakti is coming by his mercy, by Krishna's mercy, and enter the spiritual world. This is what is happening to us now. Right now we are receiving this chid bala, this spiritual shakti from Sri Guru, from Sri Vrindavan Dham, from Sri Vaishnava, from Sri Sadhu, from Sri Thakurji, from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All of these personalities. How enormous is this powerful spiritual influence that we're able to receive? Right now we're recipients of this Bal Shakti. This is the Bal Shakti. So now we have the presence of mind to make the right decision. Right? Previously we didn't have this Bal Shakti, but now we have the Bal Shakti. Now we are enabled to make this decision in favor to turn ourselves towards Krishna. Then he says, Baba, it is our great misfortune that we have forgotten our service to Krishna. This is the greatest tragedy. And have become bound in the shackles of Maya, only because we have forgotten our constitutional position and are we in this deplorable condition. In other words, because of avidya, because of ignorance. It is ignorance. That is the reason I am suffering. This is why the devotees are the most merciful. The devotees, they go into the world and they try to give this knowledge to purify this gross, heavy ignorance that covers the jiva's vision of the reality of his existence in this world. This world is the most joyful place for the devotee. The devotee can go out happily and he can enlighten others about Krishna. He can see the illumination begin in the heart of that conditioned soul when he begins to describe the nature of the spiritual world to him. He can see the dross and darkness of that Mayic impression start to fall away from that Jiva in front of him. He can see that illumination and joy that starts to take place in his heart. Remember when we first came in contact with devotees. Remember how joyful that moment was. And for weeks and months perhaps, that as that disease of material ignorance was leaving us, how joyful we became in our hearts as beginning to cross this line of consciousness. So that is the great pleasure the devotee receives when he gifts this to others, this knowledge and information. This is what Krishna, I'm saying this because this is the same pleasure that Krishna receives. We are seeing that because this next question is going to answer what I'm talking about here. So now Brajanath says, Prabhu, I understand that this marginal position is at the junction of the spiritual and material worlds. This marginal position is a state of consciousness. It's not a physical reality or a geographical place. It is a state of consciousness. Why is it that some jivas go from there to the material world while others go to the spiritual world? Beautiful, simple, straightforward question. Why do some go there and some come here? It's not my fault, in other words, he's saying. So Babaji answers, Krishna's qualities are also present in the jivas, but only in a minute quantity. So we discussed this yesterday. Those 9 similarities, the difference and non-difference between the jiva and Krishna. Krishna is supremely independent, so the desires to be independent are eternally present in the jivas as well. This is a quality of Krishna. It's also a quality of us to be independent. When the jiva uses his independence correctly, he remains disposed towards Krishna. This is the reality. I explained before the reason why we have independence is so that we can love. If we don't have independence, if we don't have this independent choice to serve Krishna, if I was forced to serve Krishna, it wouldn't be pure love. But I will independently decide myself to come to Krishna. Therefore, that pure choice represents my independence. Without that independence, there could be no loving reciprocation between the jiva and Krishna. But understand another thing at this point, that this is not really independence. This actually is only free choice. The jiva doesn't have independence. This is the wrong word. When we look at the Bengali or the Hindi, it's a different understanding. This independence, swatantra, it's not like the independence that we interpret it to be in English. Krishna, the Purush, is the only independent being. Independence means that whatever I desire will immediately happen. If I desire it to rain, it will rain. If I desire this universe to become completely inundated with water, it will be. Whatever I desire will immediately happen. That is real independence. But I have free choice. I have the choice every time. So that free will, it's like, for example, if I hold something in one of my hands, like we sometimes play a game with children. We hide something in one hand and we put 2 hands out and we say, now, which hand is the sweet in? So the child has free choice, correct? Completely free choice, independent will. But the result of that choice is not up to him. Similarly with us, we have free will, but the result of that free will is not up to us. So we have chosen to be enamored by Maya. Now the result is not up to us. We didn't know we were going to get hammered. It is just this. But when he misuses it, he becomes opposed to Krishna. When he misuses this free will, he becomes opposed to Krishna. It is just this opposition that gives rise to the desire in the Jiva's heart to enjoy Maya. This is what I already described. As soon as I'm opposed to Krishna, there's a chemistry that takes place. This opposition to Krishna is going to be described as offense. So when there is offense, the result of the offense is that material desires will become very strong in my heart. Because I can't get Krishna. And I have to be happy. Ananda Bhyasat. I am by nature an enjoyer. That is my very nature, my very tendency. My dharma is to enjoy. So if I'm not enjoying Krishna, I have to enjoy the material world. This is the dichotomy we find ourselves in. But it's wonderful when we can strip it apart and analyze it and understand it. Because once we become knowledgeable of these facts, we no longer have to be so strictly controlled by the material energy. All of a sudden we know the secrets of how to let go of this attraction to Maya. Ultimately, it depends on our attraction to Krishna. Nevertheless, if we understand the workings of it, it makes it so much more simple. Because of the desire to enjoy Maya, he develops the false ego, that he can enjoy material sense gratification. Where does the false ego come from? Ahankara, it's called. Aham kara. I do. I am the doer. That is the etymology of this word. Ahang, I. Kara, to do. I am the doer. Where did that misconception come from? It came from our beloved Shivji. Lord Shivji gave us that. Because we desired so strongly to enjoy this material energy. But how is it ever going to be possible for me to enjoy it if I'm fully spirit soul? How possibly can spirit enjoy matter? It's not possible ever for spirit to enjoy matter. So the spirit has to become illusioned to thinking that he is matter. And only in that state of consciousness can he enjoy matter. As long as I'm thinking I'm matter, this is the false ego, the wrong impression. Then I can enjoy matter like anything, because I'm so stupid I think I'm matter, so I can enjoy it. I'm covered. And it is Shivji who, out of his kindness, just like a kid, a child, cries to mummy, he wants a box of matches to play with a box of... Mum's saying, no, 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 you'll hurt yourself. And finally, okay, take it. Go on, see what happens. So Lord Shiva's like this. He's so sweet and kind and compassionate. He says, okay, have this false impression of yourself. You want to enjoy this material dull energy so much? Okay, there you go. There's an illusory conception of yourself, the false ego. Yes, you are the doer, big guy. Yes, go and enjoy. Go on, try and enjoy. What the heck happens? Bang! We bang our head in front of this brick wall of material energy. And all of a sudden, we can't enjoy the way that we imagined we could. Lord Shivji, we love him. It's his appearance day, day after tomorrow. So because of this desire to enjoy, he develops the false ego by the prompting of Shivji, that he can enjoy material sense gratification. And then the 5 types of ignorance. These are the coverings that Lord Brahma, this is his part in the deal, you see. They're all against us. Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Krishna, the whole world. If it's materially, if our motivation is material, then it seems they're all opposed to us. Because Lord Brahma, he gives us these 5 coverings, this tamasira, to forgetfulness of one's constitutional position due to anger or envy. And it's described that they're called also nascent engagements, or the 5 nascent. It's described in the 3rd canto, chapter 3. I think it's the 2nd verse. These 5 nascent engagements. Anger after frustration is like a blanket put over the jiva. And then the idea of false possession, false ownership is placed over the jiva. And then this misidentification with my real identity is placed over the jiva. And then this madness for material enjoyment, this mahamoha, These 5, I'll just read them through. Tamasirya, forgetfulness of one's constitutional position due to anger or envy. Then Andar Tamasirya, considering death to be the ultimate end. Our Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said death is just a symptom of material consciousness. You should write this down. It's a very, very beautiful line. Death is a symptom of material consciousness because death cannot touch the spirit. It's impossible for the spirit soul to die. Death is just a symptom of material consciousness. And then tamas, not knowing anything about the spirit soul, complete ignorance. And then moha, the illusion of the bodily conception of life, and mahamoha, madness for material enjoyment. So these 5 coverings are placed simultaneously on top of the soul. So we're strapped in this material world. They cover his pure atomic nature. Our liberation or subjugation simply depends on whether we use our minute independence properly or misuse it. So immediately Babaji knows what is behind Brajanath's idea. He's kind of like saying, like I said to you yesterday, it's not my fault. Immediately Babaji is on it. Immediately he's saying it's our choice, simply depends on whether we use our independence, our minute independence, properly or not. It's my decision. I have the key. It's like often we see this analogy, I'm holding on to Maya very tightly and I'm shouting out, let go, let go, let go. And who has the key to let go? The choice to let go is in my hands. I can let go, just like the prisoner in a jail. If he behaves himself and rectifies himself, of course they will liberate him from the jail. Similarly with us in our lives, very simple. This Durga Dham, Durga means prison house, jail. We are jailed in this material world, this material conception. As soon as we behave ourselves and come to again our wonderful spiritual identity, then all of those waves of love will immediately rise up in our hearts towards Krishna. So now Brajanath asks again, Krishna is Karunamayi. That means full of compassion. So why did he make the jiva so weak that he became entangled in Maya? Beautiful question. Babaji answers, it is true that Krishna is Karunamayi, overflowing with mercy. However, he is also Leelamayi, overflowing with desire to perform pastimes. Desiring different pastimes to be enacted in different situations, Sri Krishna trains the jiva to be capable in all conditions, from the marginal state to the highest state of Mahabhav. So all these states of existence are going to be developed by this conditioned jiva. All of these will be trained by the jiva through his experiences in his sadhan bhajan. We will be trained through all of these different degrees of states of consciousness, from the highest consciousness down to the lowest consciousness. We will have experienced this. And to facilitate the jivas progressing practically and steadfastly towards becoming qualified for Krishna's service, he has created the lower levels of material existence. So we're learning how to serve from the very lowest levels. We're learning what is the reality of that divine service to Krishna. When we meet the Mahabhagavat, Sri Guru, he has understood all of these degrees of services. He is accepting any sort of offering of service that we may perform, because it's beginning this path of divine connection with the Lord through service, through love. It is all based on love. Any question that arises during this discussion on Jiva Tattva, or any subject matter for that case, can be resolved on the platform of love. Every single question, you put the loving consideration into the question and you can immediately understand the answer. If you just try and use the intellect to understand these topics without understanding what is the purpose of this, the purpose of this is to awaken the spiritual nature to realizing his dharma, his swarup. his attraction to Sri Krishna. Beginning from the lowest inert matter up to ahankara. Ahankara I explained already, this I am the doer, false ego, which is the cause of so much obstruction in attaining Paramananda. This false ego, this is the obstruction, this false impression of myself that I am so important, that I am more important than actually Krishna most of the time. Is it true or not? Am I always putting myself first, my comfort, fulfilling my desires, fulfilling, whatever excites my fancy before I put the consideration of Krishna? This is why the path of Sharanagati must be there. This is the path described in Bhagavad Gita. Having fallen from their constitutional position, the jivas who are entangled in Maya are opposed to Krishna and engrossed in personal sense gratification. However, Shri Krishna is the reservoir of mercy. Thus, no matter how low the jiva has fallen, Krishna will still provide him with full facility to attain the highest spiritual position. And we can see the truth of this if we look at the 4 ages I've described before, how in Satya Yuga there were these 4 beautiful qualities of Somaha, beyond the material modes of nature, Shantaha, completely peaceful, Surit, friendly to all creatures, and Niravaka, no envy. And then the next age, there are only 2 qualities, this Dharma Vadinaha and Brahmavadinaha, that everyone was very dharmic and they knew how to perform religious principles. This is in the Treta Yuga. And then in Dwarpa Yuga, only 1 quality, Jignasavaha, always inquiring. But what were the states of attainment in those higher ages? In Satya Yuga, you could only attain actually Paramatma realization. Who were the avatars in those ages? Yogeshwara, Vaikuntanath, Parameshwara, Ishwaraha. These were the avatars in Satya Yuga. Now we are in the most fallen, degraded condition of Kali Yuga, actually the worst Kali Yuga in the whole 1,000 cycles of Kali Yuga. This is the worst, and yet there is the highest opportunity of attaining the most supreme goal, the highest goal, Manjari Bhav. This is available for the jivas in this age. This wasn't available in Satya Yuga or Treta Yuga or even Dwapara Yuga practically. It was there and it's always available, but minimal. But in this age, it's like across the board, so many of us can actually have an opportunity to hear about these very exalted states of relationship between Radha and Krishna that can be manifested within our Swarup. The nature of the Swarup is fixed. So it perhaps has been billions of lifetimes that we have waited for this particular opportunity. If you come in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Gurudev has said repeatedly, practically 99.9% means that you are eligible for this Manjari Bhav, for this Raganuga Bhakti. If you have heard of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is his gift. So we are the lowest, and Krishna has come even for the lowest. It says no matter how low the jiva has fallen, Krishna will still provide him with full facility to attain the highest spiritual position. Even the drunk, anybody, can attain this highest spiritual position. He brings this about by appearing before him along with his spiritual abode and his eternal associates. Those jivas who take advantage of this merciful opportunity and sincerely endeavor to attain the highest position gradually reach the spiritual world and attain a state similar to that of Sri Hari's Nitya Parsads, eternal associates. It's saying similar because we will be sadhana siddha. We will be perfected in our sadhana. Nitya sadhana siddha. We will become Nitya siddha after we associate with those Nitya siddha parikars. Now, Brajanath asked a beautiful question. I'm going quite quickly here because we've only got one class to do this whole tattva in. So I'm going quite quickly through. So Brajanath asks his second question. But for the sake of Bhagavan's pastimes, why must the jiva suffer? Why should we suffer? Who is Krishna? Why is Krishna making me suffer so much? It's Krishna's fault. Then Babaji answers, the jivas possess some independence. Now this is qualifying what I said earlier, that it's not entirely full independence. Only Krishna is independent. This is actually a sign of Bhagavan's special mercy on them. Now he's going to talk about independence. Inert objects are very insignificant and worthless because they have no such independence. Desire for independence. This table is pretty worthless in the sense that it can't actually have an affectionate relationship. If you bring another table close by it, it won't suddenly feel, wow, that looks like a beautiful looking table. Maybe we can have a relationship and produce another table. No, it's madness. There's no such thing, right? So it doesn't have independence. It doesn't have an independent desire to enjoy anything other than fulfilling its dharma, its function as supporting something. That's what a table does. That's its dharma. Only because of the jiva's independent nature does he think himself the master of this world. Because we have this nature, we can be illusioned to thinking that I am master of the world. In other words, constantly I have misused my independent nature. Therefore, it's my fault. This is the point that he's making. If it's true that I have some independence, then I have the independent choice. Every single moment I have an independent choice. If it was someone else's fault before, whose fault is it now that I don't come to Mangalati, that I don't worship Thakurji today, that I don't chant so many rounds, that I don't do a parikram, that I don't follow carefully Ekadashi? Whose fault is it? Is it anyone else's fault except my own? Whose? Prajna? No. Misery and happiness are conditions of the mind. We understand this. We can put ourselves in the most attractive condition on a beautiful island somewhere. All nice warm weather, nice fresh healthy food, everything good, but I can still be completely miserable if I choose to be. Or I can be in the middle of downtown New York with the bums and the rest of it like this and be totally in ecstasy, giving them Mahaprasadam or books, etc. It's a condition of consciousness. It's not conditioned by the environment. So we never need to blame the environment for our states of consciousness, ever. The environment is always friendly to our progress in bhakti, always. And this is qualified by this. Misery and happiness are only conditions of the mind. Thus one may consider misery is happiness for one engrossed in it. For example, you might think drinking is a totally miserable activity, but one who's down the pub on a Friday night is completely in ecstasy, they think. They're engrossed in that activity. They're not thinking they're miserable. They're covered by the illusion. Since all varieties of material sense gratification find a result in nothing but misery, a materialistic person only achieves suffering. This is very hard for the New Age people, who are determined that there is some pleasure in this world. Last night I was seeing these pictures of what was supposed to be describing love, material love. And they had pictures of a little girl approaching a grizzly bear. And this was how much love was this, that this small child wasn't intimidated by the bear and the bear was receptive to the child's love. And all these very sentimental pictorials of what is love in the world. But it's all about me. It's all about my enjoyment. Every single one of those pictures, every single part of that was about me being the subject and the object. There's no real relationship there. I'm in a relationship because the other person is giving me some pleasure. As long as that other person stops giving me some pleasure, oh, well, then I hate that person. Then I'm no longer wanting to stay in that relationship. I'm in everything for my pleasure. This deep selfishness that engrosses and covers the jiva is pitiful to consider. And we are trying through our services to purify that. Because the pleasure all of us have tasted at some point. Everyone in the world at some point, not just devotees, but anybody, has tasted the pleasure of giving. We've all tasted that pleasure at different times in our lives. Just helping an old lady climb onto a bus, standing aside when somebody is running at us, offering someone a place in the traffic queue, etc., etc. We've all experienced some moment when we have been the giver, and what a pleasure that was for the soul, because that is our nature. That starts to erode and purify the deep selfish sanskar of thinking that we're actually God. None of us. So, now this is very interesting gradation. With every question that Babaji answers here, I've described there are 7 questions. At the end of each answer he gives, he always gives a progression out of the misconception, a progression out of the suffering. Now he's saying, when that suffering becomes excessive, when you've just had enough, it gives rise to a search for happiness. From that desire, discrimination arises. I start to examine more closely, what is happiness? How am I happy? What is the reality? What is the truth of life? Am I going to find happiness just running to work every day, just trying to make lots of money, exploiting this world? We start to discriminate a bit. We start to use our intelligence to figure out, well, actually, my state of consciousness is quite peaceful when I'm just sitting, in a field somewhere watching nature. I don't have to work to, gain that. I can just sit there and become happy in that situation. So what is constituting my happiness? If I'm thinking that I need a lot of money, that sort of security to ensure that I'll get my sense gratification. But then I start to realize that, is this sense gratification what is making me happy? Is it? Is that what's constituting? Or is my happiness actually more around how I'm feeling with my girlfriend or my boyfriend? That doesn't cost anything. That's free. So why am I working so hard to achieve what? What is the actual state of consciousness when I could consider myself happy? This discriminating tendency. What is happiness? For the devotee, he's realized through direct perception that when he's in the company of devotees, talking about Krishna's sweet transcendental qualities and pastimes, something very deep within his heart feels so nourished and satisfied. This is the greatest happiness, the greatest taste that we've ever experienced. And that doesn't cost anything. What do they say, that song? The best things in life are free. Money can't buy you love. It's all true. It's all true. I've been rich and I've been poor. I've been poor and I've been rich. And I can't remember which was which. Like what is the difference? So an intelligent person starts to realize that it's not his material acquisitions that are going to constitute to his happy state of consciousness. And then he'll start to examine more closely. And he'll find that actually if he follows the swarupa, the nature of his real being, he's going to find real satisfaction. So from that desire, discrimination arises. And from discrimination, a research into the nature of ultimate reality is born. Who am I? This question of who am I, Kiyami, this is what Sanatana Goswami asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu became so ecstatic, and it's described, when the living entity simply asks that question alone, who am I? What am I doing here? What is the nature of this world? Then immediately that knowledge can be opened to him. But until he asks that question, then he's covered over. He's too stupid to ask the question even. So he has to come to at least the state of intelligence to ask the question. As a result of this research, one attains satsanga, the association of saintly people, automatically. In the ether, these subtle waves go out. Oh, this person needs a book. This person needs some Mahaprasad. immediately the servants of Krishna, the servants of Mahaprabhu are there, somehow or other, through a book, through some way. I mean, we can tell stories forever about how amazing ways that books have just arrived in people's hands just at the right time, it seems, Amazing, miraculous. Whereupon Shraddha, faith develops. So as soon as that Jiva is touched by that transcendental Shakti of Krishna's servants, then Shraddha begins to develop. When faith is born, the Jiva ascends to a higher stage, namely the path of bhakti. Now it's saying, gold is purified by heating and hammering. Being opposed to Krishna, the Jiva has become impure through engaging in mundane sense gratification. We have been doing this for billions of births. Therefore he must be purified by being beaten on the hammers of misery on the anvil of this material world. So this misery is not really misery ultimately, because it's purifying us. We're becoming purified by these heavy beatings of the material energy. As long as I'm trying to take some pleasure from the material world, I'll never realize that I'm not really material, but actually I am spiritual. How kind is Krishna? He wants us to realize our spiritual nature. So sometimes we have to suffer for that. Just like a mother, if the child, it wants to touch the fire, the mother loves the child so much that sometimes the mother will take the child's hand and put it into the fire. Ow! So the child knows what heat and fire are about. Never again will it try and touch the fire. It knows from first-hand experience. So how much have we been burnt? Have we been burnt enough? Maybe not enough. Maybe we have to go through more. How much more? Depends on us. How thick are we? How stupid are we? Trying to get this pleasure from this world. You see, big sannyasis, big so-called gurus sometimes become attracted to sex life. They went through all of that. What did they, at the very end, they still became attracted. It's so thick and so deep. But the attraction and embrace of the Supreme Lord is much sweeter and much more powerful. So this we must quickly aspire for. This greed must come very strongly in our hearts to quickly get Guru's embrace, to get Sri Radha's embrace quickly, to get the Dham's embrace, to get the embrace of all the devotees, to get the well-wishers of all the devotees. We must become enthusiastic for that. By this process, the misery of the jivas opposed to Krishna finally culminates in happiness. Suffering is therefore just a sign of Bhagavan's mercy. Who can understand this? We can understand this as devotees, but how can we explain that to a non-devotee? You don't. You don't try. Just like Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada when he first came. He put so much sugarcoating on these truths. We have to become expert. Oh, just eat lots of prasadam. The prasadam will have an amazing effect on the heart. And gradually you facilitate sometimes by giving ice cream, etc. Yes, you make a nice environment. Yes, you make some nice prasadam. The senses being attracted to that. I can remember when I was first a devotee, they told me you have to eat enough so that you can roll down the hill. And they used to bring gulab jamuns and halava for breakfast and straw, all kinds of attractive things, just to attract our immediate senses. So we have to because to understand this is not easy to digest, that this misery is a sign of Bhagavan's mercy. But we can understand it very simply from the relationship between a mother and a child. Sometimes the mother will have to chastise the child out of affection for the child. If the mother never chastises the child, what sort of wayward child will it grow into? Just like Mother Yashoda is thinking, I must bind my Lala to the mortar now. Otherwise he'll become a dacoit. He'll become a thief when he grows up. I'm demonstrating my affection by this chastisement. But in the immediate experience, it seems to be harsh. So understand this suffering is only immediate. It's not long term. We have to see it all long-term vision, not short-term. Everything has to be seen in long-term vision. That's why intelligent people see the suffering in Krishna's pastimes as auspicious, though the foolish can only see it as an inauspicious source of misery. So we have to see everything long-term. Okay, next question. Brajanath. The Jiva's suffering in his conditioned state is ultimately auspicious, but in the present state it is very painful. Since Krishna is omnipotent, couldn't he think of a path less troublesome? Babaji. This is one of Krishna's pastimes, which are variegated and wonderful. Since Bhagavan is independent and almighty and performs all kinds of pastimes, why should this be the only one that he neglects? In other words, everything else is perfect except this. Of course this is perfect. We have to see what is the perfection in it. No pastime can be rejected if there is to be full variety. Everything must be there. So what is the purpose of this situation? Besides, the participants in other types of pastimes also must accept some sort of suffering, just like the gopis apparently. They accepted some type of suffering. Sri Radha herself accepts some type of suffering. Sri Krishna himself, when he's lamenting away from Sri Radha, accepts some type of suffering. So there is suffering in any condition. The suffering facilitates a greater degree of the sweetness ultimately. Sri Krishna is the enjoyer, the Purush, and the active agent, the Karta, the doer. All ingredients and paraphernalia are controlled by his desire and subject to his activities. Everything is under his control. It is natural to experience some suffering when one is controlled by the desire of the agent. So when I'm not fully independent, there must be some type of suffering. However, if that suffering brings pleasure in the end, it is not true suffering. There is purpose to it. There is reason to it. It's not without purpose. It's not without clear, understood reason. Just like the chastisement of a mother for a child, there's a reason for it. And the reason is, in this case, that we are creating our own suffering, always by our own desires. Krishna is so compassionate. At the time of death, he wants to fulfill our desires. Yam yam vapi swaram bhavam. All of our desires at the time of death are fulfilled. If we desire a particular body and a particular set of circumstances so I can enjoy, he'll create that situation. How can you call it suffering, Babaji says? The so-called suffering that one undergoes in order to nourish and support Krishna's pastimes is actually a source of delight. The Jiva's desire for independence has caused him to abandon the pleasure of serving Krishna and instead accept suffering in Maya. This is the Jiva's fault, not Krishna's. He's saying it clearly. Now Babaji's coming out and saying it very clearly, that it is our responsibility. So look, I'm going to stop here. There's two more questions beautifully. We can discuss these last two questions tomorrow, and we'll go through the condition of the Jiva who is liberated from Maya. So the purpose of going through this in this form is just to analyze almost clinically our dilemma. And once we've analyzed the dilemma, then it gives us the key to purifying it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur also in chapter 7 has described this condition of egoism, of this false egoism. He says, in the pure state of existence, this is from chapter 7 of Jiva Dharma on page 143. He's saying in the pure state of existence, the Jiva has the egoism of being a servant of Krishna. But in the conditioned state, many different types of egoism arise, making the living entity think, I am a human being, I am a devata, I am an animal, I am a king, I am a brahmana, I am an outcast, I am diseased, I am hungry, I am dishonored, I am charitable, I am a husband, I am a wife, I am a father, I am a son, I am an enemy, I am a friend, I am a scholar, I am poor, I am handsome, I am wealthy, I am happy, I am sad, I am strong, I am weak. These attitudes are known as ahankara, which literally mean the sense of I-ness or false egoism. This is our obstruction. And then he goes on in a second paragraph, he says, this possessiveness, this is my house, my wealth, my body, my children, my wife, my husband, my mother, my race, my caste, my beauty, my strength, my learning, my quality, my renunciation, my knowledge. This is my wisdom, this is my work, this is my property. These are my servants, these are my dependents. This colossal affair that brings the conception of I and mine into play is known as samsara, material existence. So this is the root of our suffering, the misconception that I can enjoy this world. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is just such a genius the way he describes these. We've said it very quickly, unfortunately. I've gone through very fast. I know some of you are looking a little restless and tired today. But this is the analysis of the jiva entrapped in Maya. Ramji, you have a question? So, these are subject matters for our contemplation. To read this more carefully, more slowly, at another time when I'm feeling the strong attraction to the material energy. And it'll have the effect of purifying that misconception. But simultaneously, we need to read the sweet pastimes of Radha and Krishna, because this is the real antidote. This is just like the intellectual foundation, so to speak, but the real antidote is the sweetness of Radha and Krishna's affectionate pastimes with each other, and service to that conception is what is going to bring the greatest joy, not by necessarily understanding these things. We should hear these things sometimes, but more often we should hear the sweetness of Radha and Krishna's pastimes. That's what the heart needs nourishing in. These are just areas of knowledge that are necessary to purify our ignorance, this avidya. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Das Mula ki jai. Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Satchidananda Gaura Hari ki jai, Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Rupa Nuga Guru Varga ki jai, Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Das Mula ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhavivacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnave Namo Namaha. Ekadasi Brat ki jai.